Just ahead on American Black Journal, COVID-19 shuts down Michigan schools. We'll look at what's ahead for students and for their parents. Plus, a look at how the pandemic has changed religious traditions, and a couple's gender reveal party goes virtual. Stay right there. American Black Journal starts now.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal, partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Ally, NISSAN Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. Thanks for joining me. It's important to all of us at Detroit Public Television to bring you information to help you through these unprecedented times brought on by coronavirus. This week, we're looking at the impact of coronavirus on two major areas of our lives: education and religion. Christians are celebrating Easter this week, and I'll have a conversation with Reverend Solomon Kinloch Jr. of Triumph Church about keeping the faith during these difficult times. But first, Tonya Allen of the Skillman Foundation talked with me about the impact of Michigan schools shutting down for the remainder of the school year. Tonya Allen, CEO of the Skillman Foundation, welcome to American Black Journal.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, it's great to see you. So the Skillman Foundation spends so much of its time and its resources making sure that the kids in our communities get the educational opportunities that they're supposed to. So give me your reaction to the announcement that they won't have school, at least not in the traditional way, for the rest of this school year.
Yeah, well, we're supportive of Governor Whitmer's and her executive order. The first thing we need to do is make sure that our children are safe. But after we get beyond that, we know that there are some children who have access to more resources than others. And we believe that wealth or what your tax base is should not determine what quality of education you have. In this country, we've always believed that everybody should have a fair shot at an education, at prosperity, at, showing up and trying to see what you can create. And we know that our kids aren't having that. And so we have to figure out in this short term, how do we make sure our kids get the resources, particularly the technology and the connectivity that they need so that they can have access to instruction and learning during this time period. But more importantly, we got to make sure that we take on the public policy issues that allow this. So this is not the first time, nor will it be the last time that our kids, we will see like these inequities exacerbated. And so we have to be prepared for this. That's the only way as a state we're going to move forward and make sure that every child in this state has access to an education.
Yeah, in a way, what's going on now just kind of shines a brighter light, I feel like, on some of the things that we were getting wrong already. And if you think of cities like Detroit, for instance, a very poor city, majority African-American, poor city in our country, and the way something like this will play out there versus someplace with a lot more resources, it's pretty stunning. I mean, if you think of the number of kids who will fall further behind if we don't try to bridge that gap now, it's a pretty scary prospect.
Right. Well, we're going to have to try and figure out how to fill the gap now, but we also have to figure out how we program summer. So, lots of the summer programs for young people have already been canceled because of this pandemic. And so we got to figure out how we make sure that young people, when the weather changes, really are using their time well, and that they're not distracted by negativity. And then we also need to figure out how are we going to facilitate learning then as well. So I think that the governor's plan is an important plan for the short term, but what I think is that for our school districts who are working so hard and they're doing such a good job considering the circumstances, is once they get past like building out what these education continuity plans are that's required by the state, then we have to ask them, now what are we going to do during the summer? How are we going to start school earlier? How are we going to make sure that we double down and that kids aren't just promoted to the next grade and have huge gaps in competency or in curriculum? We got to make sure that kids both stay safe now, and then when we come back into the school year, that they get what they need. And if that means we as a community have to respond in a different way to make sure that resources are there to support educators, then we are going to need to do that. And I think that's going to be a stretch for us all. But we have to keep the pressure and the accountability on all of us to show up for our children.
So give us a window into how the Skillman Foundation and other philanthropy in town are kind of responding to what's happening. I would imagine there's kind of a mad scramble to make it better for our kids.
Yeah, it definitely is a scramble. We all are. So I would just tell you a couple of things. One is that there's a website that many nonprofits and foundations in the city of Detroit have worked on called COVID 313. Mm-hmm. And that COVID313.org, that website has resources for parents and for children. So how to keep your kids busy, giving them access to academic supports, if they need health or mental health supports, all of those things are in one place. And so we hope families would access those. The second thing is that we are going to have to tackle this issue of, like I said before, devices and connectivity. So we are working with others on trying to tackle that issue and to help school districts fill the gaps where we can, because there are so many school districts who are pulling all of their equipment out of their school buildings to make sure kids get those things. And that's great, but we also need to make sure that those school districts are prepared in the fall to be able to reopen their school buildings and have the tools that they need. So that's a priority for us. And then the last thing that I would share, well, two last things I would share. One is high school seniors. We need to make sure that high school seniors don't think that this is the end. They still have lots of things to do to prepare for college or to prepare for trade school or work. So on our website at www.skillman.org, there is a blog there that talks about a Q&A that talks about what do seniors need to do and what do their parents need to do. And then the last thing I would just say is that we need to check on our children. So if it's us as individuals, nonprofit organizations, schools, we need to make sure that kids are safe. And one of the things that we know is that kids are at home with their parents who are very stressed at these moments. And so we need to support parents, support kids, and make sure that they're safe. So let's pick up the phone, let's check on our kids, let's check on their parents too. And if they need resources, let's figure out how to get that to them. And there are lots of nonprofit organizations are doing that. And we're working directly with United Way, who's leading that. So families should call 211 and they will help direct those resources.
What does next school year look like if maybe we are still living in an altered world? Are there things we should start thinking about in terms of making sure that we fill gaps before they show up for us in September?
Absolutely. So one of the things that we're thinking about is how do we make sure, not just how do we get technology, it's how do we actually use technology to help transform learning, right? So we don't need school buildings to learn. They're nice places for children to be and safe places for children to be. But we got to make sure that this technology is integrated into our curriculum, and that if it's the coronavirus or if it's where we are out of school because of weather for a week, we should not be stopping learning. And so we have to address this issue, Stephen, and we have to keep our pressure on the state legislature, who will be looking, rightfully so, to make cuts in the state budget because of the decrease in sales tax and income and revenue coming in. And this is a moment where they will be having to make tough decisions. And I would say our kids cannot carry the brunt of those tough decisions.
Yeah. I also want to just ask about food and food security, which ties into education so tightly in communities like Detroit. I've been worried, like everybody, that there are kids who are hungrier right now than they would be, even though there are these extraordinary efforts to keep school buildings open and serving food. It's more of a challenge to get there. What are some of the things we should be thinking about and doing to fill that gap?
Well, I think that school districts have done a really strong job of making sure that food is getting out there. Detroit Public Schools is still distributing food at 17 sites. Gleaners is making sure that Gleaners and Forgotten Harvests, they are delivering foods to sites. And so I would just tell families, go onto these websites or United Way's website where you can find out where you can pick up food. And some of those will actually deliver food to your homes. Mm-hmm. So we just need to make sure that people know that they are being well thought of and that there are systems are in place, because that was the first issue that schools have tackled. And this is Detroit Public Schools to our charter schools. We see activities like in Macomb County where the ISD they're leading the pack in making sure that kids are getting food. I just think that educators are doing an amazing and awesome job. They, ISD in Macomb County, they deliver food on one day, and when they're not delivering, they're delivering it for Gleaners. Yeah. This is the kind of collaborative civic leadership we need in this moment.
Before I let you go, I want to talk a little about where we start the conversation about the future. You mentioned earlier that, a lot of these gaps are things that we deal with all the time, and people are not as exercised about it as they have been because of coronavirus. But we always have a hard time getting to the space where we're actually talking about fixing those things. This is an opportunity. How do we make the most of it once we get out of this?
Yeah, well, I feel really strongly about this. You often hear people say, like, high tides rise all boats. Mm-hmm. Well, let me tell you, we've had some years in Michigan where we've had high tides and all boats have not been risen. So even though we're in a crisis, yes, we are going to have a budget deficit, but we cannot let this go. We have to push hard and press hard on this. I am just adamant about it, because if we don't deal with it now, it's never going to be dealt with. And so I think that we have to respect our elected officials. We know that they're going to have to deal with a lot of challenges, but this cannot be one that we allow them to take their foot off the gas on. We need equitable funding, period. We got to make sure that schools have the resources that they need based on their student needs.
Pastor Solomon Kinloch, Jr. of Triumph Church, thank you for joining us on American Black Journal.
Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah. So these are very tough times for everybody, and it for me is really telling that Easter, the most important holiday in the Christian church, takes place at the height of such a trying time. I wonder what you make of that aligning of things, that we are at this really critical and tragic juncture in the story of humanity at the very time that we celebrate the rising of Christ, the most important event in Christian history.
Well, you just hit it on the head. That is the relevancy of the resurrection, that our founder, or the founder of our faith, was confronted with an impossible situation. He was crucified, and we believe he was dead on Saturday. But although he was in a tomb, he resurrected on Sunday morning, reminding us that if it was not impossible for him to extricate himself out of a situation, that we are available and we have accessibility to that power right now.
Yeah. So give me a sense of the things that your church members are coming to you with, and the things that you're telling them about the difficulty of now, about the losses that we're all sustaining. What are you counseling people to feel and to do?
Well, one of the greatest challenges that we face is that we're such a relational church. And this robs us of our ability for physical, authentic relationships. And so many of our members, including myself as leader, miss that, the ability to just share comfort and consolation through a hug, through warm greetings in close contact and proximity with one another. But one of the things that I have sought as a pastor to redirect the focus and the attention is not necessarily on us meeting together physically as a church, although some would make that the pivotal point of this particular discussion. Instead of discussing and debating whether we should meet together as a church, because if we are responsible and we're going to be responsible with the safety and health of our parishioners and our community, we have to do our part in limiting the spread and the containment of this particular virus. And so what this does for the body of Christ is give us an opportunity to more so not just have church, but be the church and start doing church. And so what we've done is launch a 60-day of generosity, where it gives us an opportunity to make a greater impact and show the hand and the feet of Christ in the earth now more than ever. So on a daily basis, we're feeding 200 people a day. We're delivering groceries to seniors, single parents, those with physical inequities, disabilities, handicaps. We're helping those that are unemployed, that have been laid off through the midst of this crisis. We have a digital divide in the DPS in many of our urban community centers. And so what we're doing is ensuring that we have an opportunity at this particular point to distribute laptops on a weekly basis. So we're doing more service now to redirect our focus and our attention.
You know, people have talked about this distancing that we're experiencing, and they sometimes describe it as social distancing. But it reminded me this week that that's kind of a misnomer. It's physical distancing.
Exactly.
It's not social distancing, and as you're saying, it's not spiritual.
Exactly. Well, we have a drive-in. So one of the things we wanted to do is say, how do we continue to articulate and communicate the gospel, the good news, in a manner that people can know that, listen, although we may feel helpless in a lot of situations, we're still not hopeless. The founder of our faith gave us hope during this particular time of the celebration, that although the carpenter of life, death comes to reshape the view of the window in which we look out on life, we got to hang on to the reality that there's a brighter day ahead. And that's what the church is responsible, not to just communicate that and remind people of that, but also to show people that this is an opportunity for us to come together now more than ever, to be there for the least, the left out, and the left behind. In a way, we were already doing that. We were already feeding thousands of people a week, but this gives an opportunity to take the focus off ourselves so we can give a greater blessing to somebody else.
Yeah. And we talk about the financial strain as well that this is causing so many people in so many institutions, but churches, I feel like especially get hit hard when the economy freezes the way it has. How are you able to sort of maintain through?
Well, one of the things that we've been a proponent of is stewardship. That no matter how many days of plenty you have in the life of Joseph, one of the great biblical characters of Scripture, always prepare for a day of famine. That's not just a principle we teach congregants. It's also a principle we abide by as a church. This church is 100 years of age. We're celebrating that this year. And so this church is not new to difficult times. We're not new as a church to times of scarcity and of lack. But what we do is we always hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst. And right now we are living on faith. Yes, we've been tremendously hit like most congregations have, but right now we're trying to be a model to so many that this cannot just be about economics. This has to be about people. This has to be about us coming together, and we may not have as much resources as we had previous to the crisis, but what we do is take the resources that we do have or that we do get and be there for people so they don't feel like they're by themselves.
Yeah. And give me a sense of how you as a pastor, I mean, I think this is a time when people turn more to faith and turn more to vehicles of faith than they do normally. How's this been for you, and how are you managing all of what's changing around us?
Well, you know, this is a Herculean responsibility right now for all of us that are serving on the front line. I pray daily for our first responders. I'm praying for all our humanitarian and philanthropical leaders who are trying to make sure that people were already in a crisis before this, so many people. And now it has been aspirated and exasperated, and not to mention the mental drain that it's having and the mental demand it's having on so many that are wrestling with anxieties and worries. And so as a leader, one of the things that we have to do is remind ourselves that the Bible portrays those of us that are of faith as soldiers. And when a soldier goes to the battlefield, he knows that he goes to the battlefield under the threat of death. And there's a possibility that he may not return home. But the reason he chooses to go anyway is because he knows when a battle is going on, somebody has got to fight. And as believers, we can't go and hide out somewhere in a house. At the end of the day, we want to stay safe and stay home as much as we can, but we can't do that to the extent that you have the marginalized and those that are in the crevice of life not having the resources they need to make it through this as well. And so the message that we preach on Easter is, yes, the external factors are conducive to a feeling of fear, but those of us of faith have decided that we would rather die on our feet than to live life on our knees.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful words. Thank you. Pastor Solomon Kinloch Jr. of Triumph Church. It was really great to have you here, and really great the work that you're doing just to keep people's hope and faith stoked at this time, right?
Thank you, Brother Henderson. You've been such a tremendous voice in our community. I have much love and respect for what you have done and what you continue to do and what you stand to do in the future. And so thank you for the honor of just sharing with you today.
In addition to changing the way we worship, the pandemic has affected the way we celebrate special occasions. A stay-at-home order and social distancing have forced people to find creative ways to share good times with family and friends. For example, expectant parents Justin and Amber Edwards had to revise their plans for a gender reveal party. The native Detroiters now living in Texas shared their announcement via Facebook Live. One Detroit producer, Angela Brown, spoke with the happy couple.
My sister actually was planning a gender reveal at a restaurant. She had decorators, she had photographers, all this going on. And then, of course, the coronavirus started happening. And with us not wanting to be, around everybody during this time, we just decided, let's do virtual. Actually, Justin came up with the idea, and then my sister called like a day later, was like, we should do a virtual one. Let's do Facebook Live. And I was like, you know what? That's a great idea.
If it's salty, they say that's a boy. If it's sweet, they say it's a girl. So what's been your cravings? I'm going to say more of the salty side.
We set it up here in the house, and we had over 100 people viewing. And so it actually, I think, kind of probably turned out better because it was supposed to be real small with like 15 people. Yeah. With just friends down here in Fort Worth or Texas. But because we were able to do it live, we got a chance for our family and our parents back home and friends. Back home in Michigan, actually, like kind of around the country to kind of tune in. So,
and they were able to put it on their TV screens, and we saw some reactions from friends and family. Like, it really was really nice. I think they really enjoyed it.
I can't tell. That's a boy.
Us doing it was one thing, but to see everybody's reaction and people calling us afterwards and saying how good it went and I just wanted to put some smiles on people's faces during this crazy time where we just stuck in the house all day.
This was the first gift. I promise you.
Y'all ready? Here it comes.
Man, I done already ruined the bag. That's the first gift.
It was pretty cool. So, like I said, just to see like some of my friends and family, just, you know, to kind of share that moment with us. Cause like we didn't know. And it was just pretty cool. So my phone was buzzing, people still calling, and it's a pretty dope experience all the way around.
That's our program for today. Thanks for joining us. You can see more of my interviews at AmericanBlackJournal.org, and you can always connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. Stay home and stay safe. We'll see you next time.
Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
Support also provided by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first. The Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal, partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Ally, NISSAN Foundation, and viewers like you. Thank you.